Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer 2 Quick Match gameplay. This time around we are playing as the force of Brettonia against the force of the Empire on the map Summer Song. And as you can immediately see, we are in for some Royal Hippogriff action. So one of the things I was kind of thinking about with a Brettonian matchup is that the Grail Knights, while they work rather well for me, and I don't necessarily agree. So I know some people say that you shouldn't even bother with them because Empire players can just counter with priests, which I don't really necessarily agree with. Those abilities like Soulfire still have a reasonable cooldown, and they don't really last that long. But I wanted to try something with pure AP with the Royal Hippogriff Knights. I actually did some testing. Royal Hippogriffs have about a 50-50 chance of winning against normal Demigryph Knights, because they get the charge off and the Demigryphs don't. They can't actually win on their own, but I figured that with using them in conjunction with Questing Knights and being able to get an immediate recharge, these guys could potentially be really good and kind of compensate for Grail Knights. So what I did here is I did bring 2 units of Questing Knights on one end, the Companions of Canel on the other, and then 2 units of Royal Hippogriff Knights. So a very hefty investment in the air for my Brettonian force. Infantry force, the infantry core is essentially identical to what I usually run. Triple Men-at-Arms, Fey Enchantress with Regrowth and Earthblood, double Peasant Bows with Fire Arrows, as well as the Beast Slayers of Bastone. My opponent here did decide to go with a bit of a interesting build. I don't really know. There's not exactly a focus, but he does have a lot of anti-large, a foot anti-large. He's got 4 units of halberdiers, so a very respectable unit. They've got AP, they've got anti-large, they've got a charge defense against all. Honestly, pretty decent unit, except for their attack speed, which is really low. These guys are pretty solid, and of course their armor, which is a bit lackluster. Then my opponent did bring 2 units of Demigryph Knights, one which is the Royal Gryphs, the other Demigryph Knights with halberds. He's got Barfazar Gelt with Searing Doom, as well as Final Transmutation. One of the things I don't think, I'm not sure, unless your opponent, unless your Brettonian opponent blobs up their cav a lot, I don't really think Final Transmutation is that good. Especially not against the Fey Enchantress, because if you don't know, she does have a 60% magic resistance, which means she kind of shrugs that stuff off pretty easily. And plus she's got heals. Then my opponent did bring double handguns and double cannons and a Witch Hunter, so he's got quite a plethora of sort of abilities and range damage that he can drop on me, and finally a Warrior Priest. So definitely some good tools for cracking the Brettonian cav train. And you can see we're immediately pushing in. I'm trying to play it a little safe. You can see the opening volley from the cannons. It's actually going to get some medium connections, knocking out a couple, like 1.5 dozen of the Men-at-Arms, knocking out about half dozen Peasant Bows. So definitely doing some damage, and we're just going to push in with the Fey Enchantress. I'm trying to kind of bait out my opponent's shots. I really don't want my Royal Hippogriffs taking too much cannon fire. Now, Royal Hippos do have 6,000 HP. They've got about 1,000 HP per model. But, you know, cannons do hit pretty hard. Cannons have like 400-ish damage. They've actually got over 400 damage per shot. So you definitely don't want to be taking those hits to the face. And you can see over there, they are going to start chipping away at the Companions of Canel. And that's really not what you want to be seeing as Brettonia. You can see we've actually kind of lucked out there and haven't actually taken a hit just yet. And we are trying to sort of skirt through the woods. But at the same time, those aren't the hits you want to be taking. Over here, in the meantime, the Royal Hippogriffs are going to start taking fire. You can see I'm kind of trying to dodge around a little bit and juke the fire. But honestly, with any formation that has more than with any unit formation that has more than one model, which essentially means any formation, you will start. It's a little difficult to dodge all the shots, and you can see we're going to take a bit of a connection there, but unfortunately for my opponent, this does mean he's not in a position to counter my Questing Knights. You can see the Questing Knights are going to be able to start swinging around. Anytime the Men-at-Arms are advancing steadily to the front line. One of the important things to keep in mind is that you want to wait for your infantry, and honestly, this is something I'm not doing exactly correctly here. I'm kind of playing a little bit greedy. Honestly, if you're playing as Brettonia, what I should have done is waited for my infantry, because the cavalry moves so much faster than the infantry. What I should have done is waited for the infantry to be about here before finally committing my cav and pushing out. But I got a little greedy, got a little overextended early on, wanted to get into position early, and honestly, I've kind of made a mistake there. But regardless, we're going to start pushing into my opponent from the flanks. You can see another series of cannonballs just pounding the Companions of Canel. They've already lost about a quarter of their models. But, you know, the fire arrows are about to start unloading on these filthy handguns. And you can see the black powder weapons, you know, they've only got 20 armor. The fire arrows are going to do a lot of damage to them, and they do get outranged. Meantime, here in the pits, we are going to get a nice little engagement here, piling into the Royal Gryphs. And while they're bogged down in the Questing Knights, you can see my opponent wasn't paying enough attention. He got this, I do believe he got his charge off over here. He got a bit of a good connection. but he was busy with his handguns, and because of that, the Questing Knights got a full-blooded charge here in Lance formation against the relative Gryphs. They're actually doing rather well for themselves, and in the meantime, we are going to be able to start routing out these cannon crews, start disrupting these handguns, and really being a general nuisance. You can see an Earthblood does go down to keep these guys a little healthy, and we are going to get a collapsing sort of rear charge here with the Demigryphs. Over here in the meantime, you can see the relative Gryphites are actually going to tear out the vanilla Demigryphs, which means they're going to rout, and we're going to be able to pursue them with the Companions of Canel. And in the meantime, you can see we do get a nice little Chalice Potions on the Halberds. My opponent does drop a final transmutation, but you can see the Fanchantress. She took some damage, but honestly, she's been taking quite a bit of damage from the Warrior Priest. I wouldn't bet that most of that was from the final transmutation, and so she's tanked it relatively well, and so we're able to just shift her around, keep her away from the Warrior Priest, and she'll be a-okay. In the meantime, in the pits, you can see the handguns here being routed off. My opponent is using his halberds to chase off the Questing Knights, which means that they're not over here defending against the Royal Hippos. And Royal Hippos hurt. They're up to 35 kills. They are well on their way to their first chevron. Over here, these 6 hippos are diving into the Great Cannon crew, kind of just shrugging off the halberds. Now, halberds will do quite a bit of hurt if they're allowed to sit on your hippos, but you just got to keep moving. You got to keep juking around. We dive in here into the back of these halberdiers, getting immediate rear charge, and then promptly cast a regrowth on the Royal Hippos. And hippos do have, well, they don't have the perfect vigor of most Grail units, they do have the physical resist associated with the Grail units. So they've got, right now they're up to 42% physical resist, and they're able to just tear through these halberds with contemptuous ease. Elsewhere, you can see once again another meaty rear charge, helping these men-at-arms who were actually performing okay against the halberds with the fire arrow support, and just breaking them off. And now we are going to be in a position to start overrunning these the Witch Hunter, to start overrunning the halberds. You can see we're going to get a immediate rear charge here into the flank of these halberdiers, which is just going to start putting them in a very bad position. The Empire State troops just aren't really able to hold from. That's one of the things. The Empire State troops hold rather well. They're not like, say, Brettonia men-at-arms, who without support will rout to just a frontal charge doing damage. Usually State troops will hold better than that, but if they start getting pincered, they don't have the leadership of, say, Chaos Warriors or Blackguard or something to hold the line when they've gotten flanked. So you can see here my opponent, it does actually just simply decide to GG out as we've crushed him from all sides. So in a quick overview of the after battle report here, you can see the Hippos actually did a lot of work, 60 and 72 kills, and they didn't lose a single model, causing fear tear-outs all over the place. They got 2 chevrons, or a chevron apiece, and yeah, they helped wipe out those Demigryphs. They helped knocked the artillery pieces offline. They dove in and they really disrupted those great cannon crews and really took them offline. They fear and terror out of the halberdiers. They disrupted the backline. They were immensely powerful. And I think against Empire builds, especially because a lot of Empire players will go cav heavy, you might actually find yourself in a good position with these guys, because you can commit your Questing Knights. You can get your Questing Knights in there first. They bog down your opponent. You get a nice immediate rear charge with your Royal Hippogriffs and just shut that stuff down. Just destroy them with a rear charge. Destroy the Demigryphs with a rear charge. And honestly, these guys do have decent damage output. The Royal Hippogriffs are not pushovers. I think people have a pretty low opinion of them, I think, but you know, they do cause fear terror. They've got decent melee stats. They've got attack in the 40s, defense in the 30s. They've got 20% physical resist, and they've got 6,000 HP, which is pretty huge. That's more than any cavalry unit by far. The closest cav units I can think of are like, maybe, is it Horned Ones? It might be Horned Ones, but they're really solid, and I was actually really pleased with them. Now, obviously you have to be very wary of cannons. If your opponent brings a Hammer of Witches especially, that could really hurt. Great cannons, of course, are nasty. Handguns are nasty. You got to be careful, but that's why you got to advance with your infantry first, in my opinion. And you can always dodge around. You can stay at max cannon range and kind of dodge around, and your Hippogriffs can close the gap usually within just a few seconds. You can probably close the gap before the cannon is able to get a second volley off. If you beta volley out at max range, charge in, you can probably close the gap before those cannons get another volley in. But regardless, good game to my opponent, Donald Trump here. One of the things I would note is that honestly, I don't think either Witch Hunter or Balthazar are good choices against Brettonia, because the Fanchantress is such a common pick, and the second most common pick is Lewin, who has the Lion's Shield, which grants a 44% magic resist on a temporary basis. You're not going to get much value out of these Lord Sniping skills, in my opinion. That's why the Luminarch is not particularly good. Fanchantress is built in 60% and 15% missile resist. 60% magic, 15% missile. Lewin's got his 44% magic, 44% missile if he wants, with Lion's Shield. So it just doesn't work out, I don't think, and I don't really think it's worthwhile. I think if you're looking, Balthazar Gelt, maybe if you're trying to final transmutation a blob of knights, but especially the Witch Hunter, I just don't think it's worth it. He's far too immobile. He's far too inflexible. Like I always say, I think it's better to just match Brettonia in the Cav game. Even if the Brettonian player does something like this, I think you've got a decent chance if you brought like 4 Gryphs. Regardless, though, good game to my opponent, Donald Trump. I do hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe down below if you've not already, if you just to keep up with additional content and uploads. If you have any comments, any criticism, any questions, anything like that, be sure to post them down below, and I will do my best to respond as soon as I can. As usual, guys, I do thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Wyvern out.